From the Arizona Professional Locksmith Association studios, it's the Locksmith Show. I'm here live in the studio with with Ryan. Andrew may be joining us if he can get his family situation on the vacation straightened out. And I, of course, am your host, Locksmith Charley. We have a story from WNCN of Raleigh, North Carolina. The Better Business Bureau is warning North Carolinians about a reoccurring scam involving fake locksmiths. Well, just like here and everywhere else, they give a low price on the phone, a much higher price after the service has been performed. And if the customer does not pay, the scammer then engages in threatening behavior to intimidate the victim into paying. How can we get this stopped?
We can't. The only thing that we can do, and I've said this 100 times, and I'll say it 100 more times, is consumer education. Just let the people know what's going on. This is never going to end. People have been scamming people since the creation of money. If they can figure out a way to get one over on somebody else, they're going to do that. So, unfortunately, trying to stop them is kind of fruitless. We're just going to be pulling our hair out. As you know, I mean, you've been doing this for, 10 years, trying to stop these guys?
Well, I know how we can stop them quick, fast, in a hurry, but if we go summarily executing them, God is not going to like us very much anymore.
Well, God or no God, it's,
and Sheriff Joe, too.
Yeah, I'm not so much worried about an omnipotent being judging me as I am the judicial system that we have in place judging me. So I would say harm begets more harm. So if we're going to...
Well, now he's going to start with the begets.
So, no, I'm going to end it there. Just the one. The one beget, and that's it. You can't counteract somebody's hostile behavior, their deceitful, dishonest behavior with more anger and hatred. You have to be the bigger person, be the more mature, be the more professional one, and, just let people know what's going on. Do it in a calm manner.
All right. Well, I'm going to be very calm when I talk about 3 Dutch designers have come up with the Relock, a brand new bicycle lock that apparently permanently attaches to the bike, and you can lock it with one hand by pushing a little lever. Then you go off and do your business, and then when you come back, when you get close to the bike, it unlocks for you because you've got a little proximity device on your person. As I see it, that could be a problem because the bike could unlock itself just any time you walk by and stay unlocked if you don't lock it again. And then what do you do? According to their information, though, your little remote control will tell you at the push of a button whether it's locked or unlocked. And I don't know. I think it's probably a lovely device, but I think that when you get close to the bike, there should be a little button on it that you push to unlock it. It doesn't have to be as complicated as sticking a key in it or wiggling a U-bar around or anything like that, but to have it just automatically unlock seems to me to be slightly problematic. I do have an inquiry in with them, though, and hopefully one of these days we'll hear something back from them.
Cool.
We have Rob Painter calling to join us again.
We have Mr. Painter on the phone again. How are you today, sir?
I'm good. How you doing?
Oh, I'm living the dream.
Absolutely. So
what do you want to talk about today, Mr. Painter?
Well, we can get into automotive forensics.
Say it's not so.
It is so.
It is so.
We do automotive forensics for various entities, for insurance companies, for law enforcement, and it can pertain to certain situations. Like we'll say, a good example is burn vehicles. What the purpose is determine how the fire started, and you can't assume that it's an arson. And so what you have to do is take all sorts of hypotheses and figure out what happened with the fire, how it started, and that type of thing. So what you're gonna and this relates to just about anything automotive, whether it's a crash or a theft or whatever it may be.
So when the car is driving down the road in 115 degrees, and all of a sudden it turns into what around here they call the carbecue, you don't automatically assume that it's arson?
Well, many people do, and that's the problem. There's a lot of factory problems, and I know we think that because we're modernized and we have all the sophisticated equipment and everything else, these vehicles run hot, and there's certain things that are unique problems. GM had a situation where their plastic fuel lines would break, and what would happen is over a period of time, their plastic fuel line would become brittle. And any type of movement that you do, and all you have to do is bump a fuel line, and you ruptured it. And so the guy leaves the repair shop or whatever. He starts driving down the road. All of a sudden, he's got a fire, and he shuts off the ignition. He'd shut off the ignition, and then the fire quits under the hood. And then he turn the ignition back on, because what you're doing is supplying the fuel pump, and you got flame going there. And I've had many of those. And so, if you assume that it's arson, that's a big problem. That's the difference between an arson investigator and a fire investigator. Fire investigator is trying to determine the cause of the fire, whereas an arson investigator has already got a predetermined opinion as to what happened to the fire.
Well, here in Arizona, of course, with the heat, you have to watch out for anything plastic. It's just all, after a year or 2 or 3 or 12, all the plastic just starts breaking and disintegrating. And so why they would ever think about making fuel lines out of plastic, to me, is just stupid. But there's a lot of that going around. I think it's contagious.
It's money. That's what it is. I had a car that people had a newspaper route, so they were hauling around, I don't know, maybe 1,200 pounds worth of newspaper in their van, and one day it burned up. And what had happened was the transmission got extremely hot from pulling all that weight and from outside temperature and everything else, and so the transmission fluid started spitting up the transmission filler, which GM had a problem with too. That's why they put a lock on their transmission filler sticks, and it poured onto the catalytic converter, and then you had a fire. And then come to find that because they didn't say it was being used for commercial use, the insurance company didn't cover it either. And there's a lot of, the whole thing was filled with newspapers up to the top of the door. It was really quite amazing, and they didn't burn.
Well, that's interesting. You'd think paper would burn readily, but I guess when it's all packed together,
it won't when it's stacked. In other words, when you got a bunch of pages together, if you ever try to burn a book, you'll find that you'll be able to burn the front cover, the rear cover, and the rest of it kind of stays intact except for the edges. It just doesn't burn.
Well, I thought we discontinued book burning.
Yeah. But, the thing is, what you got to do, like with a fire, is you have to go through NHTSA and look for recalls, but not everything's recalled. You can go to owner's complaints and say you got 50 complaints of the same problem. Well, then you have to follow up on that. In other words, we'll say that there was a common fire that would start, say, on the left front of the vehicle. Well, then you find out what's on the left front that caused that particular situation. Things like that. And you rule that out first before you turn around and assume that it's arson. too many of these guys go into the fires and they look at them and it's just an arson. And, well, no, it's not. It can be, but you have to rule all that out. And once you rule all that out, then you turn around. You're finding the point of origin where that started, and then what you're going to do. And when I say point of origin, you can't just say the interior of the vehicle. You have to go and nail it down to it was the passenger front door switch. I mean, you have to nail it down, and you can do that by the condition of the wiring, stuff like that.
All right. Well, Rob, we're coming up on a break here. The call-in number is 602-277-KFNX, and we'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to the Locksmith Show. We've just got a little bit of bad news here. Apparently, Andrew's not going to be calling in. Apparently, there's been a death in the family, and children are having a hard time dealing with it. But we do have Rob Painter with us, and Ryan here in the studio, and I, of course, am your host, Locksmith Charley. Again, our call-in number is 602-277-KFNX or 277-5369. We had an interesting car yesterday, Rob.
What's that?
An 05 Durango.
05 Dodge Durango should take the Y160 PT, I believe.
So if that car disappeared, would the insurance companies want to pay for that, and why not?
Well, is that transponder equipped?
Well, that's the funny part is it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I was going to say, hold on. So let's say it's supposed to be customer bought the car, they thought it was transponder equipped, and something were to happen to the vehicle, and they found out it wasn't transponder equipped after the fact. What would happen in that scenario?
They'd investigate it. The insurance company would investigate it, and that would be a red flag. The fact that, transponder, that means that the vehicle can't be stolen according to the insurance company. And so that would instantly go to the special investigations unit.
But
and the problem is,
the question is, though,
yeah.
How would the insurance company determine whether they think it is or is not transponder equipped?
Well, that would be usually off the VIN number, okay? And what you can do is you can go through the dealer and get a list of the options, okay, off the VIN number. It tells you exactly what the vehicle has, and it will tell you if it's transponder equipped.
So I'll give you some info on this scenario that we ran into yesterday. Got a customer calling. She lost her keys to her 05 Dodge Durango. Sent her down to the Dodge dealership to get her SKIM number, which is required to program the car.
Right.
They also gave her the key code. So I showed up, punched up the key code, and it didn't operate anything on the truck. It would not open the doors, would not turn the ignition. So I had to call Charley out to come give me a hand because we didn't have any I didn't have an easy reader in the truck, and that's a little beyond my skill level currently. So he came out, used his easy reader, got the cuts off the door lock. I punched it into the Ninja Laser and found a completely different set of cuts. I mean, not even close. So I cut on a metalhead key, operated the locks, turned the ignition. And for a laugh, Charley said, "Hey, why don't you try starting the truck?" I was like, "Well, it's a transponder. It's not going to start." He's like, "Yeah, humor me. Give it a try." Okay. So I try it, and the truck starts.
And runs.
And doesn't stop running. We let it idle for a solid half an hour, and it never shut off.
Well, you need six seconds. If it doesn't recognize the transponder key, it'll start. It'll run for 6 seconds and shut itself down.
Yeah, this ran for half an hour.
Okay.
So in that situation,
and there wasn't a security light anywhere to be found on the dashboard or anything. So my theory is it was probably ordered as a fleet vehicle, and
the customer bought it after the fact,
unknowingly.
Yeah, her original key was a plastic-headed key
with remote buttons on it.
Yeah.
It never worked.
That never worked.
Okay, it was a FIB key.
Yep.
Fixed integrated blade. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So in that situation, how could how could that lady, avoid, going, she's completely unaware. She's not even going to have any records that it's a fleet vehicle. If you pull up the VIN number, it comes up with a completely different set of cuts. It comes up with a skim code. It shows that it is a transponder-equipped vehicle.
Well, the skim code, just because it has a skim or a PIN number, doesn't necessarily mean that it's transponder-equipped. And that's why I was asking Rob about this, because I've gotten PIN numbers all the time for cars that you just stick the key in and start the car up, and it didn't have a transponder system to begin with.
Well, I can explain the lock not working, and that would be a good example is, hey, if it went through an auction, didn't have keys, some locksmiths put a different lock in there.
Yeah, slapped a door and ignition set of locks on it.
And bypass.
Or if it was fleet keyed, then after they took delivery of the vehicle, they could have had it keyed up so that all their employees would be able to jump in that vehicle and run off anytime they want.
That's correct. See, that's the problem with, real life compared to theory.
Right. I got a big old fat dose of that yesterday. But the reason we bring that up is because, in those types of situations, what can the consumer do? Because, she's not going to have any records that was ever a fleet vehicle or that it was rekeyed. There might not even be records anywhere,
Well, the problem is, as you say, there's a lack of records and all that. And if it shows up that it's got a transponder in it, if some forensic locksmith gets in there and says it's transponder-equipped vehicle, then she's going to be, investigated. And there's not a lot she can do about it. Yeah. The biggest problem with insureds when they're going through a theft claim is they try to defend themselves. Well, I didn't do it, and, they probably didn't, but they try to defend themselves and saying, well, if I would have done this, if I stole it, I would have done this. And it's kind of like, shut your mouth. Don't say any of that stuff. That's not the time to defend, when you're going through a claim.
Right.
Like in a situation like this, it's not her job to prove that, it's a transponder vehicle. And, if the insurance company comes back and says, well, it's transponder, it can't be stolen, well, then she has to hire someone like me to turn around and, go after the insurance company, because that's what I do.
Right.
Throughout the country. And I've had them in Phoenix. I've had criminal cases like that. And, it's scary stuff. It really is. It's kind of like everything's turned against you just because you bought that vehicle,
Right. She thought she was getting a smoking deal on a pretty nice truck, and
if somebody jumped in that vehicle and pounded a screwdriver in it and force rotated the cylinder and got the thing to where it would crank over, they'd be going down the road, and the insurance company wouldn't know a thing about whether it's transponder equipped or not.
Well, that's true. And the interesting thing about the skim, okay, there's a lot of different ways to go around the skim, but I'm gonna turn around and tell people, who cares? I didn't design it. If you disconnect the battery for an hour, you turn around, plug the battery in, it went to sleep. You can start it right up with a regular key.
Really?
Yes. I know that because I was working with a Tucson attorney on that.
And you tried that repeatedly, did you?
I'm sorry? And
you've tried that repeatedly, have you?
Oh, yeah. Yes. And there's other ways to go around it, too. All these systems, they sound real sophisticated and all that. They're really not. I mean, it's like when Ford said with their original transponder, the PATS, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, virtually unstealable. Well, all I did was read a schematic from a Ford service manual. and I figured out how to defeat it with one wire.
Well, and that's all those systems are the same. I drive a BMW, and I'm about to, do some modifications to it, and I have to bypass the EWS system in it so I can put this engine that I want to put into the car. And I was able to find on forums on the internet on how to bypass it. You just jumper to, 2 wires.
Well, you got to be careful with what you see on the internet. Not all that is what it appears to be. I'm not saying that it isn't, but the thing is, you can get an AK500 and you can bypass the son of a gun with your own remotes.
Yeah.
And have it all set up. You can steal a BMW in 1 minute.
Well, all I had to do was back up to it with my van and use the wheel lift and drag it on down the road. I didn't need to bypass anything.
Well, that's true. That's true. And, the insurance companies look at these stuffs as, well, someone would have to take a flatbed. No one uses a flatbed anymore unless the thing is just, no wheels and tires on it or something like that, and then they drag it up there. It's more common to use a standard tow truck with a wheel lift on it, and you're gone in, as little as 10 seconds.
Well, yeah, they don't understand that. You can, even if the e-brake's locked and you only have access to the front of the car, you can wheel lift it, pull around the corner, drop it, turn your truck around, pick it up from the rear, and you're going to roll away now. You're not dragging, locked up tires.
Well, here's the thing too. You don't drag either if you get out of the tow truck and you disconnect the linkage. Okay, the thing's still locked in park. So if a forensic locksmith looks at it and says, "Well, the transmission's still locked in park," but the thing rolls because the transmission's disconnected.
Well, and we're going to roll to a break here in about 3 seconds. So
we'll get back with you here in a sec.
Welcome back to the Locksmith Show. I've been trying to get Mr. Molesky to come on and discuss a few issues with us, but so far we can't get him to
commit to a date or a time
or anything.
Yeah, I've seen the emails. You've been pretty diligent about trying to get him on the air, and he.
Now, are you going to engage in debate, or are you a fan of Mr. Molesky?
Well, I don't really have an opinion one way or the other right now. What I want to talk about is the Communications Decency Act and the immunity that it's giving Google to spew forth lies and co-conspire with the locksmith scammers.
Wow.
The Telecommunications Act, which does not in any way address telephone directory listings and lets the phone companies advertise hundreds of phony addresses for places that they don't install phone service. And I'd like to get people that would commit to introducing legislation to change these problems and fix them.
How about just enforcing the legislation that exists? I mean, we already have legislation in place to stop this from happening, and they don't enforce it. We've had these conversations.
The Federal Trade Commission Act is one thing, but what I'm talking about, the Communications Decency Act, which was intended to protect children from pornography, has been interpreted to give search engines and internet service providers just blanket immunity for any lies that are published on their website. And my feeling is that they need to make themselves aware of anything that's not true and be self-policing, but in the event they can't be bothered to do that, if they're informed by someone that some inaccuracies are on their site, they need to be mandated to change it, and they need to be accountable if they don't. They don't need to be immune. I don't know if you've heard this or not, but Mark Baldino in the East Coast has sued Google a couple of different times and can't get to trial because the cases get thrown out of court on pretrial dismissal motions that have been already held up by the Court of Appeals.
They're saying they're frivolous, or they just...
No, they're saying that under the previous interpretations of the Communications Decency Act, they have immunity.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, blanket immunity, so they can continue to reproduce.
How the heck did they get that in? That seems a little powerful to me. Blanketed immunity.
Yeah.
And that's why I want to get him in here. We want to illustrate these points to somebody that might have the power to make those changes. And nobody wants to tackle this issue, and it is a real consumer issue. People are getting scammed out of hundreds of thousands of dollars every year because of misinformation that Google is publishing.
If you go to our webpage, thelocksmithshow.com, and click on the banner on the top that says letters, you'll see what I gave to Kirsten Sinema almost 2 years ago, asking her to sponsor or introduce legislation, and she can't be bothered. Most everybody I talk to can't be bothered.
If you go on our website as well, you'll see links to other articles that have been published about fake locksmith companies that are creating business listings on Google with photoshopped images of vacant parking lots with their company name all over the place. They literally find vacant lots that have no brick and mortar structure. They place an address, Photoshop their company name all over the place.
Wow.
And Google lets them list it as a legitimate business location.
And when you talk about the phony directory listings, there's one locksmith, believe it or not, in the middle of U.S. Airways Center over there. There's one in the middle of ASU's downtown campus. And obviously that's not true. They don't live there, but those addresses remain published.
Wow.
And if you go to Google's website and their terms of service, all it says is, we're not responsible. This is open source content.
That's pretty loose in its explanation. That means anybody can do just about anything, and they're going to have blanketed immunity, correct?
Well, and we've had this debate, 100 times, and it always boils down to one thing. The internet needs to stay open source, in my personal opinion. You need to be able to publish whatever you want on the internet. That's what it's there for. However, when it needs to stop is the paid advertisement. If you're paying Google to advertise your company, then your information needs to be legitimate. And if you go to the pay for ad, I don't mean to interrupt you, keep interrupting you, Charlie, I'm sorry, but I want to kind of finish my point. If you go to the paid advertisements on Google, these are the people that are paying to be on the top of Google, they're fake.
Well, you would think Google would have to have, by law, some ethics clause that states that anything under the Google umbrella has to be legitimate.
According to the laws that Charlie just quoted, it's blanket. They don't have to take responsibility for that.
Wow.
They are able to take money and information from these illegitimate thieves and liars and post it on their website and not make people aware.
The interpretations of the Communications Decency Act have basically decided that an internet company such as Google or Yahoo is immune from any liability for anything that they have on their website that they are not the original author of.
That's false advertising. Somebody's got to take the fall on that. That just sounds outlandish. I can't believe a company in 15 years as large as Google is can actually assert themselves that they're immune to it.
Well, it's
unfathomable. Google's obviously.
When I sued them here in Phoenix, I included Google and Yahoo into my 2010 lawsuit against the criminal scammers. And they came in with dismissal motions, and they were trying to get court costs and fees out of me. And fortunately, the judge in the case felt sorry for me and just says, you know what, parties will bear their own costs.
Yeah, I can't believe that Google went after you like that. That's just ridiculous.
Well,
picking on the small guy.
If you want to know how far Google will go to disregard what anybody tells them to do, there was a TED Talks episode where a gentleman was trying to show Google the holes in their system. So what he did was created a false Secret Service listing. That's right. False Secret Service listing. Deleted all of the legitimate reviews of the legitimate Secret Service listing. Had his phone number listed as the number for the Secret Service and then forwarded it to the legitimate Secret Service phone number. So what would happen is people would call his line, and he would record the phone call.
Right.
And forward it over to the Secret Service.
And then pretty soon he'd get arrested.
No, hold on, I'm not done. So then what he does is go to the Secret Service office and say, hey, I've been recording your phone calls, and I want to show you how I did it. So he sat down with the Secret Service and opened up his laptop and played for them the phone calls he recorded. Now, he didn't listen to all of them because they were top secret and could potentially get him in a lot of trouble, but he played some of them for the Secret Service agents. And they quickly stopped laughing at him and took him seriously. So the Secret Service called Google and said, hey, you have this problem that people have been trying to tell you about. You need to fix it now. What did Google do? They shut down their map listings for 6 weeks to fix the issue, and then just turned it back on. But they wrote new rules in their terms of service to get them out of it.
Well, you're always rewriting the laws, right, guys?
Exactly.
Well, once upon a time in California, a guy went after a car repair place because stuff was missing out of his car. The car repair place had signs up on the wall saying, hey, we're not responsible for anything that's missing out of the car.
Right, lost or stolen, yeah.
And the court came back and called BS on that and says, with the increasing complexity of automobiles, people are not any longer able to repair their own vehicles, and they can't be expected to just strip everything out of their cars before they bring it into a mechanic to get it fixed. So the mechanic has to take care, custody, and control of the vehicle and responsibility for the stuff they're in. And they can't, the disclaimers that were placed on the wall were just clearly in violation of public policy.
Right.
I think somebody needs to shove public policy up Google's,
hindquarters,
website.
Google's Google, yeah.
Yeah, like that.
Well, those lost or stolen, that's just a grandfathered rule that it doesn't matter whether you're in a dry cleaner or an auto
Except
shop.
it's against public policy and therefore void.
Right. I understand.
You can make disclaimers from now until the cows come home, but that doesn't make them legitimate.
Absolutely.
So we're coming up on a commercial break. We're going to continue this lively conversation. We'll be back in
September.
In September. We'll be back here shortly, folks.
Welcome back to the Locksmith Show. You know, you've just given me a brilliant idea. We ought to talk to that child that's running North Korea and see if we can maybe get him to nuke Google for us, and then we wouldn't have this issue. But
well, if Google, and this is a valid point, if Google were to take a hit, you think Bing, Yahoo, all those other search engines would have to follow suit, right?
Well, they would, because Google is the one that lays down the precedent.
Absolutely.
Because Google's the biggest. Google's the big boy on the block. Yeah. So whatever Google does, the others do.
They've got their own barge and everything.
So, it goes back to what I was saying, during the break.
Walk away from that argument. They've got a barge.
Exactly.
The bottom line is Google doesn't want to do anything about it because they stand to lose a substantial chunk of their profits by having to take responsibility for the information they post. If they have to kick off all the fake guys paying for those AdWords, Google is going to lose a lot of money. Period. And that's why they don't want to do it. It's not in their...
Makes me wonder, though, Rob, where does your company fall in on Google under Forensic Locksmiths?
Oh, Rob hung up.
Right there.
Nope, he's gone.
Oh, well, gee. I guess he didn't like us talking about Google.
No, that's okay. So, anyway, what are, to our listeners, what are your thoughts on this topic? I'm sure somebody out there's got to have an opinion. Call-in numbers are 602-277-5369 or toll-free 1-866-536 1100. Give us a call. Let's talk about this for the next couple of minutes. We're going to be wrapping up here in a little bit, but we want to get your opinions. You know, how this affects you. You know, it affects the services that you're trying to find.
And anybody out there that's been victimized, we really do want to hear from you. The Associated Locksmiths of America is in about 3 weeks at the board meeting going to be contemplating what actions can be taken to thwart the scammers. And the chairman of our scammer committee has asked for specific incidents of who and where and when this has happened to and how many times. And so we'd definitely like to hear from you. And even if you can't call into the show today, if you email us at live@thelocksmithshow.com, we would dearly love to hear from you, because we're really tired of all this fraud that's going on and giving our industry a bad name. For centuries, locksmiths have been the most trusted trade, and we've had to be. I mean, if you can't trust the person that can open up your house or your business or your safe, then who can you trust? And if you can't trust Google to give you information that's factually accurate, where do you go to find factually accurate information? It's very, very hard. I do have some factual information, though, about some smart home stuff. Andrew Gebhardt from CNET on March 5th wrote an article about automating the home and how their various systems interact with smart locks. And one of the things that he mentioned in his article was he turned to the IFTTT and told it, okay, Alexa, trigger good night, hoping that the lights would shut off. And apparently 20 minutes later, as he was packing up to go home, all of the lights in the house shut off. Then he got to thinking, well, gee, he had tried to use the Alexa unlock the house command, and what would happen if he just left? Would the house open up 20 minutes later after he left? Apparently, the way these things work is the command needs to travel from the Echo device that listens to what you're saying to the Wi-Fi router, to the IFTTT servers, back through the Wi-Fi to the SmartThings hub, and then finally to the deadbolt or the light switch or whatever it is that's getting controlled. And apparently some significant delays can be introduced there. And
as far as the locks go, from the research I did, after you showed me the article, I jumped online and did some quick research. It doesn't look like any of the locks are voice command yet. It looks like the locks that they were mentioning in that article are probably test locks that haven't released a market yet. So, like anything that's in an early or even mid-phase, mid-test phase, there's going to be bugs that they need to work out. So this doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be a problem with these products. Doesn't mean that there's not going to be problems with these products. Hopefully they get those ironed out. But
well, he's talking about a smart home system that they're currently marketing, and when he tells it, turn the lights off, and it takes 20 minutes for the lights to go off.
I specifically said
a problem.
I specifically said locks. I did not say lights. So that is correct. If the light system isn't working correctly, then that's something that they shouldn't be releasing to the public. As I said, the locks aren't available to the public, according to Schlage and Amazon.
Well, I've seen the Schlage locks.
Well, they have smart locks that connect to your Wi-Fi and use Bluetooth key fobs and number pads, but nothing that I was able to find was voice command. So maybe we could try to find that. Like I said, I wasn't able to find it. I jumped on Amazon. I jumped on Schlag's website. I didn't see anything that was a voice command. At least it didn't say it specifically. So, as far as the lights go, yeah, that's definitely something you need to figure out because it needs to not be taking that long. It shouldn't take that long. So.
You finished, are you?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Because I wasn't talking about just locks. I was talking about the whole system. And apparently there are interfaces that go between this IFTTT thing and basically anything you want to hook up to it. And if a Schlage touchscreen deadbolt has the ability to be triggered by an outside device, then it doesn't make any difference if that thing is voice controlled or not. If the system that is voice controlled can't be bothered to get the signal to it for 20 minutes, that's a systemic problem. And that's what I was talking about.
Okay.
So, where do we go from here? I did one time go to a grocery store and wanted to use the restroom, and they said, yeah, it's right over there, and the code is blah, 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 and I walked up to this thing and looking at it, there's no place to put the code in. They didn't tell you got to wiggle your finger around on the screen to make the thing light up so you can start pushing buttons. I don't know why they have to make these things so goofy and so complicated, but they do. What else?
I got nothing. That, as far as the smart locks go, the opinions vary. I'm a fan of them. I think they're good. You don't want to have everybody having, you don't want to have customers having a key to the door because the key could get lost. They could lock it in the bathroom. Now what? You got to go dig out another key. You got to hire a locksmith to come out and pick it open or drill it open if you can't get it picked.
Well, had that happen one time when I was traveling. I pulled into a Chevron or something. Can I use the restroom? Well, no. The last customer locked the key in it. What? Well, you don't mind if I go pick it open, do you? So, well, if you can do that, go right ahead. And 10 minutes later, I'm bringing her back her key. So she was absolutely delighted.
So then that's
excellent.
She give you a couple gallons of gas on the cheap there?
Not so much. Not so much.
So that you just illustrated my point perfectly. Why? So if you can have a keypad that is coded to where you could just give it to customers instead of giving them a key that they could potentially lose, isn't that beneficial for the customer?
Oh, conceivably so. But if you're going to run a business, having sufficient management skills to keep an extra key in the cash register so that the attendant could go fetch the key out of the bathroom would be a little bit less than stuck on stupid.
Well, not only that, he's the guy that's getting hung on it. I mean, he looks like a jerk every time he denies people from using the facility. It's like, wait a sec. You at least could try and be a problem solver at this level, There's got to be a way to fix this solution because it's a service that is used a lot. I mean, people need to use the restroom, right? They're coming and purchasing gas. They're spending money in your little Quickie Mart. They want to use the restroom. They can't do it, and you don't have a way to solve it? I mean, come on.
Well,
now.
Forget all that. Just it's legally mandated. Forget service and money and all that. It's required by law.
Yeah.
So for them to not provide something that's required by law simply because they're goofy and not competent to manage their own business is just silly.
Yeah. I absolutely agree.
Well, it sounds like we're hearing the music, so that should wrap it up for this week's edition of the Locksmith Show. You're cordially invited to email us at live@thelocksmithshow.com, and we'll look forward to talking to y'all next week.
if you like my YouTube channel, please subscribe below. It's over here. I don't know. It's somewhere, anywhere. It's wherever they like to put it. I don't know. But thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe. Tell your friends. Share my videos. If you have any questions, email me, andrewslockandkeyaz@gmail.com, or don't hesitate to pick up the phone. I answer my phone all the time. 480-437-4022. Thank you, and have a great day.